better than your currency. Splurging millions, buying houses like Monopoly. Fucking 9 to 5, man, the money is a joke to me. Buying cryptocurrency, my money in the privacy. I make it rain dollars, they watch me disappear. I'm so fly, man, I'ma need some land again.
Hey guys and girls, welcome to this week's episode of the No BS with Birchy podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Birch, and this is a show unraveling the truth to the 21st century. We're now exiting the matrix and waking up to motherfucking reality. And today I have a new guest here. We've got Belinda from Ad Valuer. Thanks a lot for joining us, Belinda.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, I always ask, I've been doing these podcasts now for like 2 years, and it was like, I realized that, you know, we've got lots of team, we've got other people out in the industry that we could bring on board. I'm like, hang on a sec, we should be bringing people in and asking the expert opinion on the show as well. And, you know, I wanted to get you on board because you're a well-respected valuer out there, and you've got a lot of knowledge in the industry. And I think that our community can benefit from, you know, asking you some questions and getting the insight of, you know, how they can improve their valuations and increase the value of the assets. So, yeah, I guess the first question I got for you is like, what is your idea of a great day? When someone asks you a question, what would be a just intro question? So.
A great day for me. Well, you know what? If we're just talking about a great day in life versus great business day, you wake up healthy, you wake up happy, your kids are healthy, your kids are happy, sun shining. Just grateful that in this wonderful country. And I know that sounds cliched, but I think the older you get, the more it rings true to your heart and yourself. Kids get to school on time. The email's full of work, and all my work gets out. And I think just having a productive day, a good day, having a day that goes to plan. But being in property, you know this, anything can happen. Things get cancelled, things get called up last minute, things change. In terms of doing evaluation, I could go out, do an inspection, and I get there and the home is nothing what I expected, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is going to take me twice as long. So no surprises, just a straightforward day. But you always want a little bit of excitement, otherwise the day gets a bit boring. So that would be a great day for me.
Cool. Awesome. Being healthy, we live in a good country. It's all good signs for a good day. And cool. And I guess, like, maybe for the audience, like, you're a valuer, you also come from a tax background, but today we're going to be talking about valuations and whatnot. Maybe if you could give the audience a bit of background just on what you do. Who employs you? Is it individuals that employ you? Is it the banks that employ you? And the sorts of types of properties you look at and the things that you see on your great day out there valuing the properties and seeing what's going on for people. So.
Look, about 6 months ago, I recently went out on my own. And my clients at the moment are mum and dad investors, everyday people, regular clients. Prior to that, I was working for one of the largest valuation firms in Australia, doing everything from predominantly my first half of my career was mortgage work. So I do valuations for the bank. And I think a big misconception, or what everybody thinks, is a valuer typically just goes out, looks at the property, and then just puts a figure what they think it's worth. But there's so much more that goes into doing a valuation. There's a hell of a lot of due diligence that goes in the background, and research and assessment. We have to understand who the instruction's from and what the purpose of the valuation is, and tailor that report to the client. We also do valuations for the Office of State Revenue, so your capital gains, stamp duty. That's typically, if you would know yourself, if you get an off-market valuation, where off-market sale where there's no interaction of an agent, that client will need to get a stamp duty valuation by an independent valuer to establish the stamp duty. Now, you can't use that stamp duty valuation for the bank because it's addressed to the Office of State Revenue for stamp duty purposes. So then you'll need to address the correct report for the correct client. We do land value objection work. So a lot of people at the moment, you'll know with a lot of your clients, they're getting their land value back, especially investors, and they're pulling their hair out because they're like, holy crap, I don't know if I can hold this asset anymore. If you're not happy with it, you can object, and it's the valuer's job then to establish an independent land value minus your improvements. We also do for the courts. So you and your partner are getting a separation. You got to distribute the assets. It's the valuer that establishes that. Your neighbour's fencing is encroaching in your land and you need compensation. It's the valuer that sets the valuation. So all sorts of stuff, air valuation, waterfront properties, when you've got a jetty and a mooring that goes out into the water, and it's dilapidated and it's falling down, and who's responsible. It's much more than people think it is. And that's only residential. Wait till we get into commercial and industrial and rural, and you're valuing gold mines and cinemas and cemeteries. Try and find, there's no cemeteries.com.au for sales, so it's very hard to find comparable sales evidence. So the job gets very creative, very technical, and it is a professional industry. I think that's what a lot of people don't realize, because your opinion and your valuation is a legal document, and your opinion as a value, you can get sued on that. So a lot of people don't know what it is, and hopefully I'm pulling the curtain back a little bit and bringing you all in and showing you what it's about.
As you're saying that, because I know that cemetery plots, like, it talks about, like, I remember, like, my dad died when I was like 16. Don't mean to go morbid on everyone, but I remember at the time, like, my mum went and bought all the cemetery plots around so we could have like a whole family there. And I remember that the cemetery people said that by the time, we all go to die in like 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, it will be unaffordable for people to be able to afford cemetery lots. And I remember that sticking in my head, because I'm like, wow, if they go up like housing does, it's, how are people going to be able to afford that? And it's a big business in that. So as you said it, I'm like, wow, I never really thought about that and the, shopping centres, leases, and the value of the lease attached to the value of the property, and if it's vacant or, So
valuation, many people just assume mortgage valuation. The valuer comes out, tells them what home's worth. And in the life of a valuer, if you're a mortgage valuer, that's an important part, but it's really like 5% of what we do in terms of our capabilities and what the profession provides to the greater community, I guess.
And I guess the one that some people might be watching this show and be thinking, they've got their OSR land tax. A lot of my clients don't hit land tax because we spread it out and we go to different states and different locations. But a lot of properties have land tax, and I've seen some of mine that have come through. It's like, that's crazy. Like, people get excited because they're like, oh, the letter came in from the government and it says my property's gone up from $500 to $1 million. It's worth it. I'm like, you're going to get, robbed from the government now.
Right.
So, can you contest those? So can you contest the...
Be very careful though. I spent a big chunk of my career doing land value objection work. So typically you have your valuer that works for the office of the Land Valuer General's office in each state. And they will set the valuation, right? And if you object, it's very hard, because when you're in an established area, there are no vacant land value sales. So what the valuers do is they take a home that has been, its primary purpose of buying that home was not to live in it, it was to knock it down and rebuild. So you're buying it at land value because you've got to knock it down, and that's what we consider land. So that's how we find the land value sales. Now, you might think that, oh, there's no way my land is worth that. But when you actually understand technically how the valuations are done, it's very hard to prove otherwise. You may be out by a few, $10,000 or $20,000, but in the grand scheme of things, you need really solid evidence to be able to object. So if you are thinking of it, maybe get an independent valuer just to have a look at it for you, to see if it's worth really going down the path of objecting it, because there's a legal and there's a formal objection that you need to lodge. You can't just go, oh, I'm not happy with it, knock it back. Here's a valuer's valuation. It's not the correct way to do it. So if you want to play the game and you want to do it properly, you've got to follow the rules.
Fantastic. Cool. And I guess, Belinda, the other question that I've got that I always ask everyone as we get started is like, what does a no BS approach to life mean for you? It's called the No BS with Birchy podcast. What does it mean for you to live a life with no BS?
I think you get to a point, and you probably know this too in your life, the older you get, the less BS you give. The less F's you give, less
we can swear on this show. It's all right.
The less fucks you give. Honestly, the older you get, the more confident you are in yourself, the more confident you are in what you know. So I'll give you an example. At the beginning of 2001 or 2002, I started doing TikToks, and I was petrified. I was so embarrassed doing videos, right? This is when the platform was known of 12-year-olds dancing and 16-year-old kids, dancing. And I would tell people I'm on TikTok, and they're like, what do you do? That's embarrassing. What are you doing on there? Anyway, I got to the point where I was like, you know what? I don't care anymore. I just don't care. Who cares? I don't care. And I'm going to be true to myself. I've got a lot of valuable education that I can share with people. It's a free platform. Just do quick little videos. And that was my no BS to life. And it had, honestly, that doing those videos on a platform like TikTok gave me the confidence to go, you know what? I'm confident in myself. I know what I'm doing. I know my stuff. And if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. And now I'm sitting at around 122,000 followers. That's a lot. Like, I'm pretty proud of that. But I never started to get followers. I never started to do it. I was an employee. I wasn't doing it to get business. I just wanted to genuinely help people.
Cool.
And I think when you're true to yourself and you just don't give a fuck, it's liberating. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
Cool. And I've never used TikTok, right? I feel old nowadays, right? Like, I feel old. I remember I used to be on all this tech and all this stuff. If someone wants to follow your TikTok, how does someone follow your TikTok? Like,
it's really complicated. You look at the valuer. So just the valuer, and I pop up. So cool. I just give little, you know what it is? You've got to find that beautiful balance of education, entertainment, and also relevance. So it's got to be relevant to your target market. You've got to be entertaining, and you've got to give them some form of reason to watch you. So and you know what? There's so many more companies now trying to get onto the platform. And you know what my advice is? As I said, no BS, just jump on there, give it a shot. What do you got to lose? And who cares? Who cares?
I should get my team to set me up a TikTok, and I could go and make some funny TikToks.
It's a crazy platform. But it's if you can do it right, you can help a lot of people, and that's the main goal at the end of the day.
Cool. So, awesome. Well, thanks a lot for that, Belinda. And I guess the discussion, the importance of getting you on the podcast today is to look at, our community, predominantly property investors, are looking to grow their wealth. We buy assets, and they could be anywhere across the country. And I want to look at, the future of growth in different locations, what you're seeing as far as trends go out there, what you see as valuations, and I've got other questions around that. But I guess if we start with the future of the growth in Australia, what do you see happening? Capital cities, regional, what are you experiencing out there?
I guess as a valuer, and you're in property too, right? So you tell people, oh, what do you do? I'm in property. And the first thing they ask is, well, what's the market doing, right?
Yeah.
And then, what's happening? What's the market? Where should I invest? And then you start going, then your brain starts like churning, and the wheels start, and you're like, well, that's not a one-dimensional answer, because you've got markets within markets, and then you've got markets within those markets, and then you've got markets even down to the micro of the macroeconomics of the street. What side of the street is the house on? And that's even got its own market, right? So when we talk about the major capital cities and the regionals, then you break it down. But if we're just to keep it simple and, keep it under the 3-hour mark, I could stand here all day talking.
That's all right.
Regional growth, I think, is here to stay because of this ongoing I'm not going to call it fallout, but it's what's happened since this whole pandemic, right? Everybody working from home, moving out, major capital cities, everything's so unaffordable. You get more bang for your buck. You take your big city dollars, you fill up your bags with your city cash, and you go and you spend it in the regional areas. I do say just be a little bit careful in that, because what caused this perfect storm of everyone leaving the capital cities to the regional towns, I don't think we're going to see that again. So I don't think we're going to see this perfect storm of the huge increase in prices like we have. But that's not to say that they're just going to crash and burn and we'll never see this rise again. I think it's going to be a very gentler slope. I don't think we're going to see this steep slope of growth again. Whereas in the capital cities, I think in the capital cities, if we take Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane, which I call the three big brothers of Australia, they will always, you got to understand, for me, it's always about understanding the macro and the microeconomics, okay? What you have to understand is don't find the program, and the program is Sydney will always be Sydney. It's the largest capital city. It's going to attract tourism. It's going to attract immigration. It's going to attract, where did Packer, he's he's a billionaire, right? Where did he put his casino? Where's the money? Exactly. He put it in Sydney. So people keep, Sydney's overpriced. I've been valuing for 17 years. People been saying Sydney's overpriced when I was valuing as like a straight out of uni, knock on the door, hi, I'm here to do the valuation. And they're like, how are the prices going? Sydney's never going to get more expensive. And this is when average house prices were like $500,000. Sydney will continue to grow, Melbourne and Brisbane for those same reasons. Those major capital cities have too much underlying economic factors pushing the city up, okay? Adelaide is coming, it's been like this sleeping giant, and I think it's woken up. There's a lot happening in there. I know that there's hospitals being built, universities being built, infrastructure that's attracting population migration. So you've got to follow the numbers. Then you've got Perth, which I think absolutely exploded, went gangbusters. It's come back down. It's been asleep for a long time. It's waking up. I think we got a little bit, I would like to see a little bit more variations in the economic climate around that to be able to support these growth of the city. It's bubbling, and there's areas in there that are bubbling, but I'd like to see a bit more in the cauldron, like what's happening to be able to sustain long term in the thing with other capital cities, ACT, I think per capita has one of the highest wage growth, because a lot of people that work there are professionals and they're on professional wages. And when you have professional wages, you're prepared to pay more. So it inadvertently causes the market to increase because people have more money to spend. And when you're predominantly owner-occupiers spend more on their property. So it causes the market to go up because, and the rest of the Darwin and Adelaide are smaller cities. There's smaller macroeconomic factors around that. They fluctuate hard. They go up, they go down. So I think if you're wanting to diversify your portfolio, it's hard for me to tell you what property to buy. That. This is what you do for work. You really have to hone right in, and it's almost like that few little chess pieces. You got to make sure that you strategically place your next move in those in either Tasmania or Darwin. Strategically place those properties. Don't just buy because I want to enter the Darwin market. It'd be very strategic on what properties you buy in those markets because of this absolute
volatility.
Yeah.
Cool. I remember years ago I was documented on that Sunday night program, the Channel 7 Sunday night. And they asked me why, because I used to buy a lot of stuff in the Gold Coast, and people asked me why did I buy there, and I was like, Sydney's where the GDP is. Sydney's New York of Australia. The Gold Coast and Brisbane is more like the Miami of Australia, and that's where the value I saw it. But it's gone up a lot the last few years, and I think as investors trying to get in before those markets take off, trying to get in when the markets are at their lowest point. You mentioned Perth there before, and I'm a big fan of Perth today because I see that they've been smashed. The prices come down a lot from where it was. I'm buying properties cheaper today. If you think about inflation, 2010, what can you buy in the world that's cheaper in 2023 than what it was in 2010. There's very few things that you can find, but buying in those places that have been smashed is I like those things. So yeah, it's good to hear it from a valuer's point of view. So
yeah, there is areas in Perth, and you guys buy there, that have performed extremely well, and there's other areas. Even if they gave it to me and they said here's a free property, I'll be like, can I sell it tomorrow and buy somewhere else, because they're just not going to grow. So you really need an expert, like somebody like yourself that hones into those markets and is able to then sift through and go, okay, well, all the little sands or the properties that aren't good enough, they've fallen out of the sieve, and here's all the little areas that we want to keep and invest in, and this is why we, for whatever reason, and you can't just go out and pick a property just because it's in Perth. It needs to make sure that there is areas, because there's markets within markets. So
exactly. And I always talked about, like, there's these reasons why I buy property. I always say there's three things. I buy it below market value, upside for growth, and a strong cash flow. But a few years ago, I said, probably 3 years ago, when the situation occurred out there in the world, and I said that there was two new things that I think everyone should be aware of. One is buying something below replacement cost, because inflation's pushing building costs up. So it's a big reason why I like. But the fifth one is, I don't think a lot of people know it. I've never heard anyone talking about this. I like buying in markets. Like if we look here in Sydney at, say, Kellyville for a house and land, right? You find a house and land, no eaves on the house, small block of land, and it's like $1.5–2 million. It's like, for that thing to double in value, those incomes, even if the interest rates went down to 2%, 3%, they wouldn't be able to service for it to go up too high.
100%.
But I like looking at areas where the servicing is so far, like, say you could buy a property for 250, 300 grand, the servicing with the average income of like 80 grand or 120 grand will support that price to go from 250 to 500, 600 grand. So I like looking at those things in the market. From your side as a valuer, like, let's say, for instance, I sent you out and I said, Belinda, I want you to go and value a property for me for a bank purpose or a property settlement or stamp duty or whatever. What things would you look at in the market? How would you determine the value of that property? If it's a unit or a house, what things do you look at, just so people have the in?
So we value homes objectively and without emotion. So we also value it on a vacant possession, meaning that the home is not occupied, meaning it even if there's a tenant in there or owner occupied, because if a home's got a tenant in it and the tenant's still running 6 months on their lease, it's going to affect the market value, right? Because you can't kick the tenant out, and maybe the homeowner wants to go in, blah blah blah. We value it on a vacant possession basis, as at the date of valuation, in its current condition as it presents. Now, most people will not present their home the way I walk through it. They'll do a minor cosmetic reno on it, clean the garden, dress it up, lipstick on a pig, all that, right? So we value it like a snapshot. I walk in that day, I snapshot, and I send the report to the bank that day, assuming it's going to go to auction. Now, we don't look at it like an investor. I don't care how it yields. I don't care if it's an investor market or an owner-occupier market, because all my sales evidence around are also in that same market and also represented in the same way this home is if it was to go to auction. Like if we had 10 properties all in auction within streets of each other, they'd all have the same type of people looking at it, right? So whether it yields better, it means that it's more appealing to an investor, but not all investors are in the market. Okay, investors may only make up 20% of the market. So I can't put a valuation figure assuming only 20% of the market being an investor is going to pay a premium for that property. I've got to value it on what the market is prepared to pay as security for the bank to lend money. And I can't put all my eggs in one basket. It could very well sell at a premium, but I cannot base my evidence all on hanging my hopes that an investor will walk through and buy it because it yields higher than maybe another property.
Of course.
So when we do value it, it does come down to obviously the characteristics of the home, the location, and that's when we start comparing it to other properties. so that the comparable sales are key, and we're constantly adjusting those sales to the market. Because if I've got a sale from 6 months ago, it's very different market conditions 6 months ago. I don't know about too much of the other states, but Sydney in particular, because I live and breathe Sydney, as well, we're having this weird growth in the market at the moment where we just like everything the media is saying, everything the economists are saying, the banks are saying, the RBA is saying, the city's actually increased the last couple of weeks. Now, the problem is you have a thing called data lag for valuers, where this evidence of things that have just sold on the weekend, and I hate it when agents do this and they put contract, under contract, contact agent, and they don't actually put what the property sold for. So you're going, just tell me, I need this as sales evidence. It's important for my report. Oh, we can't tell you, it's confidential. But you're going to find out in 6 weeks anyway. But what that means is the valuer is constantly having to take old data and having to adjust it as to what we think it would represent in the market. It's a constant, it's like a Rubik's Cube, you see? It's just you're constantly adjusting and adjusting until you work out what you think it's worth. So
And I guess like looking at, so recent sales, other properties that are currently on the market, that's and the lack of stock. Like for me, when I'm buying a property, I always think, okay, if we can see that data lag occurring, it won't be evident for 6 months. So there could be a cycle of either up or down that, a timing, it might be better to revalue a property. If the market's starting to fall in your location, revalue it now and pull that equity if that's what you want to do. And looking at, just the amount of stock that's going into the marketplace for liquidity, for new stock to turn over for valuation. The other thing that I had as a question is, do you find it's easier to value a house or value a unit? Just a random question.
It makes zero difference.
Makes zero difference.
Comparing apples with apples. See, sometimes you have a unit worth more than a house. You know that. You can have, like, you go to Bondi, for instance. I'd done a penthouse there, and it was something stupid, like $30-something million. And one of the best homes in Bondi didn't get anywhere near that. And that was a house versus a unit. Do you know what I mean? I've done 1-bedroom apartments worth more than homes. So because there's too many other factors around it. And then, you can go to an area in Southwest Sydney, and the home, this is what I'm saying. When you ask me what was a good day? Not a good day is turning into a Western Sydney or Southwest Sydney area, and you turn up and you're like, oh my God, it's the Taj Mahal. Someone's built the Taj Mahal in the middle of suburbia. Where am I going to find comparable sales? And you walk in and the owner is like, so proud of the house, like, this is $4 million. And you're like, dude, the median house price is $950. How am I going to justify $4.5 million in, whatever area? So that gets really, really tricky. So I hate doing homes that are the top 0.1% of that area because it's untested in the market, and it's untested in what somebody's prepared to pay for it. So how do you value that? That gets really tricky.
Exactly. I see, like, with investors, like, I've been a big fan of units because, like, if you buy a unit and there's another one in the same complex or the complex next door, well, then there's much more frequency of those occurrences occurring there. So that's my view on it. Is that
I think if we take my valuer hat off and I put the investor hat on, I love units. My first little property I ever bought was a little unit in a suburb called Ramsgate Beach. It was a street back from the beach. It was big, unrenovated, and this little property set me up for my next 4 purchases. I just kept pulling out equity, kept going, and I was like, I sold it eventually, but I had such an emotional attachment to this little place, and I thought, you have set me up for life. Little unit, because it just happened that it meant that my land tax was low because it was low. I bought it in a right area. Yielded fantastic, and it was in a beautiful complex. It was luck, but there was also science around it. But sometimes if you have a lot of land value properties in your portfolio, chucking a unit in there every now and then, because you want to still continue to buy in the Sydney market, but you can't afford land, buying a unit, the right type of unit, means that you don't contribute too much to your land tax bill, and you can, and all that stuff. You can claim all that, your strata and all that. But buying locations sometimes in a unit is much better than buying a house for the sake of a house in a not so good area.
Awesome.
But the unit market, I'm still unsure of at the moment, because it's a bit shaky, the unit market. I don't feel that it's recovered as much as I'd like to see it.
In Sydney, like if we just use Sydney as an example, like Gold Coast, obviously very different to Sydney. The markets are counter-cyclical to each other. But in Sydney, I found, like, people ask me, like, where would I buy in Sydney today? And I find it difficult because I used to buy houses in Mount Druitt for like $100,000. Now they're $1 million, and it's like I can't justify it, right? But there's some areas where you can still pick up units that are cheaper than what they were in 2016. Around Parramatta, $300,000 for a unit in Parramatta. Like, people would think it's impossible today to be able to buy that. And there's some good value out there. I'm always an ambulance chaser. Like, I don't care if it's in Vaucluse or if it's in Mount Druitt or wherever. It's what's the thing of good value. And it's good that you're seeing that there's, the units haven't done anything, which is, I think there's opportunity.
The only thing I'd say about Parramatta is just be careful with units that are oversupplied.
Yes.
The example you gave in Parramatta was great, and I know exactly what you're saying. But I think if you are someone that's listening to this, I think what we're saying here is don't run out to Parramatta, but take the example of that, because I find areas like Parramatta, like your Homebush, like your Liverpools, have been flooded. So if you got that unit and you bought it just because, inverted commas, it's cheap, then you put that property for sale 5 years later because maybe it didn't perform or whatever, you're then up against 30 other units of a similar caliber. And what makes your teeny tiny little unit step up? So that's maybe a reason why the area in itself has not performed. And also the demographics of, the wage of the people that are affording those units as opposed to a house in those areas, and why. So, if you're buying a unit, there is a lot more research and I think professional help you need to get the right unit than just going, I'm going to go to Liverpool. I can pick something up for $400,000. It's cheap. Just because you got $400,000 doesn't mean you should invest $400,000 in the wrong asset.
Exactly. Like, when you look at it and you think you can buy in Liverpool for $250,000, it's like $250K. That's cheap for that. You want to find things of value and that stack up fundamentally with growth and cash flow, which is really important. Another question I think would be really important, like, people will be watching thinking, okay, great, Nathan's got Belinda here, she's a valuer, she's going to give some good tips to us. If someone has a property and they want to try and get the best valuation for it, let's say they've got some money to put into it, what sort of value could people add that would help with assisting with the valuation? Like, what sort of things do you use?
Are you talking you've got 24 hours notice, or are you talking you've got 24 days notice, or
no,
you want to pull out the maximum equity with maybe doing a little cosmetic reno? Like,
let's say someone's got some cash and they want to do a reno. Like, should they spend it on doing the garden, or should they do the kitchen, or should they do the bathroom, or should they add a bedroom, or should they do a paint and carpet? Like, is there an area, like, if you have, let's say that everything costs you $10,000 to do and you only had one $10,000, where should you direct that $10K, and what sort of things can you do around the home that would help?
Okay. Instead of, I'll put it this way, if for the valuation, we are technically trained to look at the home as is without furniture. So yes, it's nice to see a beautifully presented home, and everyone's like, they'll come in, and it's usually the homes that are spotless. People are like, excuse the mess. And then the homes that are like really messy, no one ever says anything. They're like, just help yourself through the house. So whether it's messy or it's clean, it's not really going to affect your valuation. But let's say you were like, you got to sell your property and you want to get the maximum value for it, right? And you've got a month and you've got $10,000. I would concentrate. I don't know how far 10 grand gets you these days, or how big
10 grand, 20 grand. Yeah.
Exactly. Let's say, I say this and I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. If we've got two things, landscaping, just cleaning up your yard, how much to hire a high pressure, from Kennard's Hire?
You buy them for like $200 anyway, yeah.
Oh, mate, that $200 is the best $200 you ever spent in your life. You're going to be sore and bruised and battered by the end of it for hunching over all weekend, but that's the price you pay. A coat of paint. Change your light fittings. If you've got those horrible oyster lights, you know how cheap they are? $200 or $300 from either Beacon on sale, what's it called? Bunnings. Even Kmart. I walked through Kmart the other day. I did a video on my TikTok. I'm not trying to push it. $5 light fittings. They were trying to get rid of them. $5.
Yeah, cool. That's cool.
Pendant. Like, what about like pendants either side of your bed? $5. It's not that you're going to add value, but what you're doing is you're making your home more marketable. And when you're making a home more marketable, it's more appealing to the market. And the market are the people walking through prepared to pay more for your home. And what essentially doing is, I put it this way to people: it's not that you're adding value. I don't know if people can see my hands, or I'm doing this weird thing where I'm increasing my hands. Not that you're increasing the value, you're just stopping people paying less to devalue your home. You're trying to hold, at the moment in the market, you're trying, if you can imagine having a cup of water, you're trying to keep that money in the cup. And the more people walk through and they start picking stuff at your house, you're tipping a little bit of that water out, which is the value of your home out, because people are, it's too hard, I got to do this myself, I don't like it. So, and another thing, changing the handles on your cabinetry, especially if your kitchen or bathroom's been renovated 10, 20 years ago, just spend $200 on like really nice handles. So light fittings and a coat of paint. I cannot tell you how much a coat of paint can just freshen up a home. Do not do anything. I know this sounds boring and you're going to be like, Belle, that's the dumbest thing I've heard. White. The same color on your ceilings and the same color on your walls, because you know why? No one's offended by white. They might not like it too. It's a bit stark and sterile. But if you do gray, somebody's like, I'm not really a fan of gray. Cream. Green's so dated. But white is white is white is white. And it's fresh.
I've always used a color called Whisper White, and there's an older color now, but now I use Lexicon Half.
Or Lexicon Quarter. That's another.
Lexicon Quarter.
Yeah.
And the ceiling with the cove cornice on it, you've got the shadow effect of the lighting, the ceiling, and I probably just turned around. You're like, wow, this guy's got a rat's tail. I do have a rat's tail.
Wow. I was like, is that a cord sticking out?
No, just a rat's tail. I grew it. You got one like me. It's beautiful. I grew it for something during the lockdown, and I never cut it off. And I said, I'm going to lose some weight and I'll shave my head. So that's why I've got a silly haircut too. I just haven't cut my hair.
Let me ask you, did you have a rat's tail at school?
No, I always wanted to. No, I never had one. I always wanted to grow one. Yeah. And I thought, everyone said, like, even throughout my business, I used to go on TV a lot, and people were like, you can't go on TV with a rat's tail. So I never grew one. And I've given the thought of society's expectations so many times, like, you shouldn't have a rat's tail, shouldn't have a rat's tail. And I just grew it, and my hair grew long, and I was like, I just want to try and grow a rat's tail, and I grew it.
That's your BS lifestyle, mate. You're living
exactly.
What you preach.
To do what I want, right?
Yeah, I love it.
I just don't care. And then I wanted to lose like 20 kilos. So until I get to a certain weight, like I'm going to the gym all the time now, but I want to shave my head. And I'm like, I'm not going to shave until I get a bit skinnier. So I'm just leaving it there. So sometimes I shock people. They're like, whoa, what's that going on?
I did look. I must admit it. I was like, what?
I thought I'd just make the point.
You do you, like I love it. It's awesome. Yeah.
Thanks, Belle. But yeah, the cove corners and the shadow effect of the Lexicon Quarter, I've been a big fan of using those colors. As an investor, I try and keep the same paint everywhere, because then if I need to repair something, it's just a one can of paint you have to have in the back of your garage, not 200 different cans. So and on a point, I think a lot of people don't realize as well, like on those colors, like just because you might like big timber furniture that makes your house look nice to you, next person will come and 80% of the market will be like, that's gaudy, like, it'll detract from you.
100%. And if you're doing it, just to uplift your home and get a little bit of equity, this is where a lot of people can overcapitalize, because you can pump 50 grand in your home and walk out with 60. Yeah, okay, cool. You've done all that work, time and effort, loss of income because you have to kick your tenant out for 20 grand. Yeah. And then for you to recoup that money that you've put in, and if only can increase your rent by $30, that's like 3 years of rental coming in before you recoup that. So it's a really fine line of how much do you spend because of the added benefit as an investor. If you're going to sell, there's a different strategy. If you're going to live in it, there's a different strategy, because at the end of the day, it's the money that's going into your property that you've got to really be aware of, rather than, oh yeah, I've watched those renovation shows. They do this and this and this, and they add this much value. Yes and no, but you got to think about if you instead could you have put 20 grand in that property and use 30 grand towards a deposit on another home and grow your portfolio, rather than pumping all of it into a home. I need to pull out 20 grand equity. Doesn't make sense. So understanding what you do with the money, I think, is really, really important. Yeah.
Always think about it that if I'm investing into a reno, I want to add like triple. Like if I put 10 grand in, I want to get 30 grand back.
100%.
If I'm putting 10 grand in, I want to get $100 per week. So that's $5 grand a year. That's a 50% return, cash on cash return, which is important. Cool. So, and what about like changing bedrooms and stuff like that, like making extra bedrooms? Is that a valuable thing that people could be doing? Yeah, just be careful, adding a room and compromising the floor plan just for a bedroom, because you can have a really awkward, just a shit floor plan, but it's a 4-bedroom house. And sometimes it depends your strategy too. Like, you can get more rent out of it, but then your market value down the track might suffer. Sometimes you're better off just compromising on the size and having a study. Everyone's working from home now, especially if you're in a regional area. It's really important. So many people are working in their own business now. They need storage, they need space. I've got a door there. I didn't have a door when I first built my house. Everyone needs a door now. Look, I need quiet. I need, if I've got kids, remember back in the day, everyone had a study nook in the kitchen? Yeah.
They're out. If you're building a house and you've got a study nook, just wipe it off your floor plan or keep it. But you need a room now that you can close the door. You've got privacy. You don't want your kids, you doing a Zoom like this, and then your kids are in the background watching Cocomelon or something stupid, and you just turn around like, shut up. Sorry about that. My kid, you need a Zoom room, So sometimes it's about understanding your market. I'm not going to compromise on my floor plan just for that 4th bedroom. But what I will do is still keep it relatively the same, but instead I'll add a study, or I'll be smarter with my space and add a 2nd bathroom instead of, I don't know why everyone's doing huge butlers, pantries and laundries now.
Yeah.
You would easily get an extra bedroom out of that space, So you're following the trends of what you think you need to do versus what you should do.
Yeah. Cool. And I guess knowing your market, like some areas, have migrants that would prefer to have a different type of flooring rather than a hard floor.
I think that rings real true for people in Sydney and Melbourne, especially because it is such a melting pot of cultures. And even buying, not that you'd buy, like it makes a difference, but building, I wouldn't recommend building full brick. But if you're at that level of a developer, understanding if you should be building full brick or brick veneer is super important as well. I've done valuations where it's a house and land package area, right? Leppington or something, and it's a full brick home. And I'm like, why are you building full brick out here? They're like, oh, I like it. It's, it's my culture and blah, blah. And I'm like, wow, you've just whacked on $200,000 or $300,000 in the construction of your home. I don't think you're going to get that back, because I don't see people paying more for the fact that it's full brick.
Yeah, exactly.
At the end of the day, you're still getting a 4-bedroom house with 2 bathrooms.
Yeah. In the mortgage bill.
Yeah. So, and definitely understanding that colors as well. I've had some cultures and they love using red, red splashback in the kitchen, really red mahogany floors, and that that will only work well in that suburb. But if that person took that mentality and then put it in an area like the Sutherland Shire, near Cronulla, I think the surfy culture will be like, no, I prefer white and birch colours and beachy colours, and I don't want red in my home. So it won't perform as well out there. So it's understanding, 100% understanding your market.
Cool. Thanks, Bill. I appreciate that. And I guess just to ask you a few more questions just on you, why you do what you do. Like, what makes you love being a valuer? Like, why do you enjoy what you do?
So I'm, as well as being a valuer, I'm also a registered tax agent. So I do depreciation schedules for all of the investors. So if you're an investor and you need a depreciation, I'm giving myself a plug. There you go. I do depreciation schedules. So I love, I've got a university degree, so I came from a tertiary education. I just love learning and I love helping. And I think I can see in yourself too, you've got a podcast, very successful business. As I said, we're trying to do a short podcast. We could sit here and talk 3 hours about property. And I think if you really have a passion for it and you really love it, then you love what you do. And I genuinely, hand on heart, love what I do. And I have a real passion for educating people and to share my knowledge. And I think I do that through what I do through work. And I think very few people can genuinely, hand on heart, love what they do. So I'm very lucky. And I do it because, and it's just something about the fabric of being an Aussie, about, talking about property. You line up getting your coffee. People are talking about, the market. You lining up at Coles. The property market. I bought a house. I'm buying a house. I'm selling a house. You're either living in one, you're selling one, you're buying one, you're renting one. It's in the fabric of who we are. So, and I get to work in it. So I'm very lucky.
Awesome. And I know you said before, and you had that unit that you bought that was Ramsgate Beach, and then you pulled equity, you bought like a few properties. It sounds like you've invested, and it's something you're just passionate about in general, and it's exciting. I look at property.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I look at property from a perspective that you can go and earn money from a job or whatever the case may be, and people are trapped in their jobs. That's why it's, I say they're in the matrix, right? They're stuck in the matrix. And, nothing can give you like the sort of growth or income or capital net worth position that a property can, because the system's so geared to these things keep getting inflated away and all that. So it's just exciting. So,
It is. And you know what, going back to, you're on social media as well, and when you put posts up, and then you always get those negative Nancy's, and they always put, that shit, the government, the negative gearing should be banned. I feel like they should just change their perspective, because if you have, and I'm not going to get hate for this or whatever, I feel that if you have a victim mentality, instead of saying, I can't do it, so if I can't do it, it's too hard for me, then nobody else should be able to do it. If I can't benefit from it, then I hate all the landlords because they're greedy. And I think, well, I probably speaks true for a lot of your investor people living here and listening to this. You know how much sacrifice it takes to be a really disciplined investor, because you're not going and spending your money on stupid boats and cars. I live in a suburb called Brighton-le-Sands, right? And do you know how many jet skis are out in that bay every given Saturday and Sunday? The cars towing those jet skis, the cars driving up and down, they don't live in Brighton-le-Sands. They live in areas, they can't afford to live there. They live out, I don't know where they come from, but they don't live in the area, because you drive through my suburb and nobody's got a jet ski in their driveway. Not a single one. You hell-bent to find one. But there's people spend their money other than investing, and investors are so disciplined, and you think, why am I getting crucified for being smart and educating myself, listening to podcasts like this, reading books, hiring professionals to help me further my investment journey and grow my wealth, and yet I'm the bad guy, where I could have gambled or smoked or had an addiction to whatever and threw my money away, and yet I'm seen as the bad guy because I'm disciplined in saving. And does that make sense?
There's enough education out there, Belle. Like, we're in the world now where you can just pick up the phone. We can find you on TikTok. We can find someone on the Instagram. We can find
100%.
YouTube videos. Like, the knowledge is out there. And I think it's arrogant and ignorant for people to be like, oh, poor me anymore, right? And the way I see it, and I'm not saying it from a point of gloating or that. I just don't care. Like, if rents go up, rents go up. Prices go up, like something's going to happen out there. And, as you build out your position, you kind of can build to a position where you're always going to win no matter what comes your way in the market. But, the knowledge is out there. If people want to sit there and say, oh, you're bad because you're a greedy investor or whatever, the thing I look at is that we need tenants as well, right? So they play their part, like their victim mentality. Like, it is a mindset. There's so many times I know in my life and my investors I speak to, sometimes I speak to my investors and it's like I'm being a bloody counselor to them, right? Because it's like, oh, this happened, that happened. I have properties I was talking to someone yesterday, and I was saying, like, I manage like thousands and thousands of properties for people, but my personal portfolio, I've had 6 properties burned down in like 20 years of investing. I've got like 250 properties, and every time one's burnt down, I've like been so excited because people look at that and go, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that your house burnt down. But it's like, well, there's a process in place.
You physically mean burned down, not literal, like not, you mean burnt fire.
Yeah, fire burnt down.
Oh,
Like, I've had
I
them
thought you
burnt
meant
down.
like crashed and burned in the market as if it didn't.
No. Just they're caught on fire. Like, they've caught on
Oh,
fire,
wow.
right? And I could sit here going,
Your portfolio's lit.
yeah, it's lit. Yeah. It's and I remember once, like, I bought this house at the Gold Coast for 500 grand, and I was talking about it at the seminar I was doing, and it burnt down. I paid 500 grand for it. It burnt down, and the first thing I asked was the insurance paid, and was the lease intact, right? And as soon as that happened, I was like, oh, great, right? The insurance paid out 500 grand. The mortgage got paid off. The land's still worth the same amount because it was just an old house. And I could have sat there when I told people that, oh, my house burnt down. People were like, oh, I'm so sorry to hear about that. Like, someone had passed away. And I'm like, no, it's fine, right? The insurance is there.
Yeah.
So I think, the mindset behind it is like, we could all sit here and be, negative, and we can all sit here and whinge about our bad things that have happened in our life and why it shouldn't. But taking action and educating yourself. Like, my first house, the roof caved in because it was full of termites. That would have been enough for me to go, oh, this is shit, whatever.
Yeah, 100%.
But it's, and you'll always find those negative people that'll be pointing the finger at. And if you're on like a news website, right, and the news writes a story about you, whatever, and it's like, oh yeah, this person must be greedy. So many times people have said Nathan must have had an inheritance, and it's like, I look after my family, like it's funny, but it's a mindset. And I think a lot of people can't physically picture the ability to do something. That's why it's easier to blame or easier to, do that.
Yeah. It's sad because you're right. There's so much education out there. I think for a lot of people, it's I guess when you go through this wealth journey, you have to unlearn a lot about what is holding you back in, I guess, what we've been taught. I don't know about your background, but I'm a child of an immigrant. My parents came out here from Europe, as they do.
Yeah.
And they came here with the mentality, be careful, work hard for your money, and be careful, don't take risks.
Yeah.
And then you get a little bit of that comes in the fabric of who you are. So you are a bit risk adverse, and you're scared to take that leap. And I think a lot of people are stuck in this cycle of, oh, my parents didn't do it, I'm not going to do it, it's too hard. And then it's easier to cocoon back in yourself and say, okay, I'm not going to go out and take a risk, because taking a risk is too scary for them to even fathom. And all you need to do is that first property you ever buy. If there's anybody listening here, this, the very first property you ever buy, whether it's your principal place or your investment, is the hardest one. It's your biggest deposit, your lender's mortgage, insurance. Once you get that right one, and it's like my little unit, and it's the right property, and it grows and it does what it's supposed to do, the rest of them just fall into place one after the other, and it just becomes easier, and then you start making your money or your portfolio work for you, and you're no longer working for it. So it's that first one is the hardest one, and then the second one comes and you're like, oh, okay, that worked, and then the third one, and then so on and so forth. So hang in there, but just take that first step. Take that first
I think
step.
that's important. Like, and have clarity, I guess, as well. Like, if you got a goal, make sure the property's fitting in line with your goal, making it's fitting inside your budget, and
no, there's no real one fits all. I think you're 250 investment properties deep. Your next purchase is going to be very different to mine, and mine is going to be very different to somebody that, a client I'm going to see next week. So whoever is, wherever you are in your cycle, just because you heard of a friend at a barbecue, bought a property, and we'll go back to Parramatta, bought something in Parramatta, that would have been absolutely perfect for them in their portfolio, but it could destroy yours because you're not buying it, So, and it's fine to reach out and get professional help and go, hey, I'm feeling a little stuck. How can I get unstuck and get to that next level? So,
Awesome, Bel. Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate all the advice. I feel there's lots of nuggets there that you've shared with us today. And I guess leaving it to you to give a bit of a plug to everyone, like, how can we find more about what you do? How can we connect with you? How can we know more about your tax depreciation schedules? How can we know more about your valuation service? Where do we find you?
Yeah, so my company I started is called Add Valuer, and I thought I'd play in a little bit of the, add value, and I'm a valuer. And I think a big part of my business is obviously doing your traditional valuation and depreciation work. So they're the no-brainers. But a big part of what I do is just helping people understand how they add real value to their home. Because I'm not a builder, I'm not an interior designer, I look past the aesthetics and I say, okay, yes, you can make a beautiful home, but you can actually add more value. I've physically walked through about 15,000 properties. It's about $12 billion of real estate that I put my name on. And don't forget, each property you inspect, I look at 5 or 6 comparable sales to support that. So I don't even know how to do the maths, whatever 15,000 is times 5. That's how many properties you analyze in your time. And like you yourself, it just becomes like second nature in your brain. Okay. So I want to be able to take my knowledge and my experience and then give it to my clients and go, hey guys, I can actually help you get the most value out of your home, review floor plans, make sure that, is a 4-bedroom home going to be worth more than a 3+ study? Do you have to go to a 5-bedroom? Is 5-bedroom no difference between a 4-bedroom? How do we help you? How do we save you money by adding the most amount of value? So that's my plug. It's who I am, awesome. Add Valuer, and you find me on, if you just, honestly, just type in Belinda Botzolis or Add Valuer or The Valuer or I'm the only valuer out there. I wish there was more because we're an awesome, it's an awesome profession. So if you're a valuer listening to this, get on socials. We need more of us out there. So, but at the moment, I think I'm like one of the only valuers out there. So just type in Valuer, I'll pop up somewhere.
Awesome. That's cool. Awesome, Val. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show today and sharing with us all your knowledge. And we'll catch up soon. And I've got lots of other questions and thoughts about just random things with properties and questions and stuff. We'll have another chat about offline. So
sounds good. Sounds great.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
My pleasure. And thanks a lot for everyone for tuning in to this week's episode of the No BS with Birchy podcast. You can find us every Thursday, Google Play, Apple Play, Spotify, and YouTube. So we'll catch up soon and see you next week. Bye for now.
Like Bilal said, man, we're stuck in the matrix. This my advice, don't care if you take it. The dollar about to die, soon to be hyperinflated. This my 2 cents, don't care if you save it. Join be decentralized and you will see you been lied to the whole time, and it's the irony, cause they do the exact opposite. You become a slave to the system, enough your money, all they do is profit. There's no conspiracy theory, you better hear me. Crypto won't set you free before the system does. I don't care if you do or you don't, but what I'm saying is the truth to the reason you choke. I've never been a failure, excuse my behavior. Keep talking, haters doing me a favor. They all telling lies, I know what they been telling you. I'm the opposite, the Donald Trump of Australia. It's amazing, here for the taking. My time is never wasted, just getting wasted. These girls say I'm really breathtaking. I can't help it if I really